What is up, guys? My name is Rafal, and today we are talking about the dynamic duo of cinematic travel footage that is the FeiyuTech G5 gimbal and the GoPro Hero 6. Guys, I just came back from traveling across Southeast Asia, and I've had the chance to see some beautiful sights while collecting some awesome cinematic footage. So as you guys know, with most of my projects, I depend on the GlideCam HD 2000 to stabilize all of my shots. But that thing is way too big to be lugging around Southeast Asia for 5 months. So I knew I needed something smaller and lighter to help me get those cinematic shots that I love so much. So after a little bit of research, I decided to go with the FeiyuTech G5 gimbal to accompany my GoPro Hero 6. And after a little bit of practice, I was able to get shots like this. With the included tripod, the entire setup stands at just under 17 inches. It's small, it's lightweight, super portable, so whenever I'm out and about filming, I could just take it from the side of my backpack, turn it on, get the shot I need, put it away, and keep moving. The gimbal comes in this little case that keeps everything together, and I love that you can put the entire gimbal in with the GoPro attached inside the pouch, so you don't have to keep taking the GoPro on and off whenever you're filming. On the back of the gimbal, you have the joystick that controls the movement of the camera. Below that, you have the power button that also acts as a mode button. By default, the mode is set to follow, so wherever you turn the gimbal, the camera will slowly follow you. If you push the power button again, it'll have it set to locked mode, so that way the camera will not turn no matter what you do to the gimbal. Right here at the bottom, you have a button that switches the camera 180 degrees for vlogging and self-facing mode. Let go of it, and it switches back to front-facing. Here at the front, you have a button that's meant to control the camera from the gimbal that requires a USB connection. I normally don't use it because I like to control the camera manually, but you guys have that option. Now, one of the downsides to this gimbal are the tiny screws that hold the camera in place. Whenever I have to take the GoPro out and put it back in, it could get a little tedious to have to shimmy the GoPro through the clip and then have to grasp these tiny screws to try and secure it in place. Not only that, but the motor on the gimbal actually blocks the power button, so whenever you want to change any settings or turn the camera on, you have to loosen both screws, pull the camera out, push the power button, push the camera back in, tighten the screws just to get the thing going. So before I put the camera on, I make sure I have all my settings in place, so that way I can just hit record, get the shot I need, hit record again, and keep moving. So to get the most cinematic shots out of this camera, I have a very simple setup. I'll normally film at either 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second. If it's getting a little darker, then I'll have it switched down to 60 frames per second. If I'm filming at 1080p, I'll have the field of view set to linear to minimize the distortion I get on the side of the camera. Otherwise, if you're filming at 4K, you're stuck with that wide field of view, but you can fix that distortion in Final Cut or Adobe, whatever you use. I will have Pro Tune turned on and have the color profile set to flat in order to get the most dynamic range out of the GoPro. That way I can color correct later in post. Shutter speed is usually set to auto with exposure compensation set to -1, so that way I save some of the highlights and I can boost up the shadows later. I'll have my minimum ISO set to 100 and a maximum ISO set to 400 because let's face it, GoPro is not the best at low light. I will also have video stabilization on the GoPro turned on to give me another layer of stability while I am filming. Alright, so that's it for the review. Now here are some tips you guys can use to get the most cinematic shots while you're traveling with this combo. Tip number 1, keep your knees loose. Yes, the gimbal will help you get a stable shot, but it's not perfect. Keep your knees loose to avoid that up and down bounce people get when they normally walk, and your shots will look that much better. Tip number 2, incorporate more than one camera move. It is very easy to just move in and out or left and right while you are filming, but use the joystick to add another layer of movement. For example, if you are moving from left to right, use the joystick to push the camera up while you are moving to make your shots that much more interesting. Tip number 3, get low. I love this mode so freaking much. It is the perfect mode to get nice and low to the ground, to get those really cool dynamic following shots, or to make your subjects look that much larger. Just remember, if you guys are switching to low mode, rotate the handle around the side like this. Don't throw it over the camera because the motor will be in the shot. Tip number 4, hold the camera at a 45-degree angle. This will help stabilize the Y-axis of your shot since the camera will have some room to move up and down as you walk. Tip number 5, use the foreground and the background together. If you are filming something that's far away, it can be very difficult to see any movement. Use something in the foreground to emphasize movement and show much more depth in your shot. It could be anything from trees to a light post to people moving around. Just make sure that there is some distance between your foreground and your background, and it's gonna make your shots much more dynamic. Tip number 6, not too slow and not too fast. It can be very tempting to just blaze through a shot, especially if you're filming at 120 frames per second, because you could slow it down in post. But this might actually ruin your shot in a couple of ways. Because you are moving so fast, you don't even have a chance to catch the screen and you might be missing your subject in the shot. Also, the gimbal itself might actually struggle to turn fast enough in order to keep your subject in the shot, and you might get some jitter caused by the motors. Now at the same time, guys, don't go too slow, because human error might give you a little bit of a jitter that the motors might not pick up on. And if you plan on slowing the footage down in post anyway, there's really no need to go slow in the first place. Give a nice smooth movement wherever you're shooting and you're gonna be fine. So there you have it, guys. The FeiyuTech G5 and the GoPro Hero 6 is an awesome combination for you to get some very awesome cinematic travel shots while you're abroad. Let me know what your thoughts are on the gimbal in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. If you guys like this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. A like and a comment won't hurt either. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.